All right, I'm here with Aidan Burns today. Aidan's played soccer and lacrosse at Hopkinton High, just graduating recently as a senior. Let's hear a little bit about soccer.
All right. So I played varsity soccer for 3 out of the 4 years I played at Hopkinton. My freshman year, I started out as the JV goalkeeper. And then eventually there was an interesting scenario moving into sophomore year. I came into tryouts thinking I was going to be on JV again because there was a goalkeeper ahead of me that was only 2 years older than me. So it looked like he was going to be the goalkeeper just seniority wise. And so I came into tryouts thinking I was going to be the JV guy my sophomore year. And then Coach Zipke comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Aidan." I'm like, "How's it going?" And he's like, Sam quit and you're the goalie now." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yep. So welcome to varsity." And I was like, "All right, sweet." And so then that sophomore year, I became the varsity goalie, and I was lucky enough to play with certain older guys that were, guys I looked up to, and they were very good soccer players and just great teammates as well. So I was lucky enough to get that varsity soccer experience earlier on in my career because of just that sort of fortunate event that sort of happened to me. So we went through sophomore year. We ended up losing in the semifinals, which sucked. And then my junior year, we had another very strong team, and we ended up losing in the semifinals again. My sophomore year, we lost in a penalty shootout, for those that remember. And then junior year, we lost because of a penalty as well in the final, call it 10 seconds of the game. Bad call. And we lost the semifinals once again. And so that sort of fueled the team a little bit more to push ourselves my senior year. And we did end up pushing ourselves, but it was an interesting sort of field of teams because the top 6 or 7 teams were all actually very good. So there was no, it was sort of anyone's game at any time in the playoffs. So we ended up losing in the quarterfinals to Bishop Brady 3-2. But once again, all of the losses that I've experienced in soccer were never anything that I was completely upset about. I was upset about losing, but they were never bad games that I lost. They were just either from unfortunate events or just sort of like the better team would win on the better day, or it's just sort of how it went. And that's how it goes in sports. So it's certainly something that I've used, those losses I've used to improve upon my own game when it comes to soccer, for sure.
All right. So what do you think soccer has taught you that, no other sport can teach or only few sports can teach?
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough in soccer to be in this unique position as the goalkeeper because there's only one of those guys on the field. Everyone else is sort of the same, whether they're defense or offense. They sort of have similar roles on the field. Whereas a goalkeeper, you are alone. You're the only guy when everyone's on offense and pushing forward. You're just staying behind and you're just there with your own thoughts. And what I sort of found was as a goalkeeper, it sort of translated everything mentally, at least, over to other sports because there's so much that you think about, especially when the ball's on the other end of the field. Any thought just kind of pops into your head. And so one of the biggest things is being able to compartmentalize whatever is going on in your head and still being able to maintain that focus. And I feel like goalkeeping specifically has taught me a lot mentally. And it's a very mental position as well as physical because obviously everyone sees the diving saves and just all of those different aspects of goalkeeping, going onto the ground, getting the ball, all those different things. Everyone sees that, but no one sees or is able to acknowledge the mental aspect of it, especially on things like penalty kicks, where it's just a mental battle between you and the other guy at the penalty spot, or it can be something sort of just thinking in your own head. Like if a goal goes by you, they score, you got to be able to have a short memory, flip a switch, be like, okay, that play's over, reset, and here we go again. And I think that being able to have a short memory and that reset button that I sort of created for myself was very important in transitioning over to any other sport or any other aspect of life that any sort of adversity I would encounter, especially because in my younger years, when I started playing goalkeeper younger, I would get a little more emotional or upset when a goal would go in. So, a goal would, they'd score and I would be, extremely upset. And even if we're up like 5-0 and I'd lose the shutout and we win 5-1, I would still stew over that goal. And I would hold myself to a high standard, but it wasn't to good or healthy point. It was just me sort of beating up on myself, and it would affect my play later on in the game if I let that affect me. So having that mental fortitude is definitely something that has carried throughout other sports and other aspects of my life. And I think goalkeeping specifically sort of taught me how to have a more mentally tough regiment, so to speak.
I feel like in many sports, a short-term memory, like forgetting about something bad that happened, just let it go, is important. Like, and it's also important to forget about like the good stuff. Like if you have, for example, you make a ton of saves and you haven't let a goal in, you can't dwell on that too much. You got to focus on, continuing the same way. I think that carries over to a lot of other sports, like you were kind of saying with that, just that mentality.
Yeah, exactly. I think the short-term memory and also just being able to identify what you did wrong, that something that has gone wrong, and being able to fix it instead of stewing over the mistake. Like that was something I learned quickly in goalkeeping, and we'll talk about lacrosse later, but just things in those sports where you can make a mistake and that mistake could be costly, but trying to fix that mistake or make up for it later on is going to be the big thing. Instead of dwelling on that mistake, just flip it around, fix it, and just keep going.
Great. You want to talk about lacrosse now?
Sure, of course. So lacrosse is a different scenario for me. I played varsity lacrosse all 4 years of high school. And I was lucky enough to be able to be on the freshman year, 2019, where we won the state championship. That was a very cool thing to be a part of, just because up until, that was my first year of high school sports. So to be able to come home with something was really, really special. And so that freshman year was honestly one of the best years I've had of lacrosse. Just the teamsmanship and everything. I'd never experienced anything like that before, because I'd always played youth lacrosse in Hopkinton, and then I'd played travel for the Tomahawks. And so none of those teams were extremely close. And then this one, I realized, when you're practicing every single day with the same guys, you develop this bond or this family that just never goes away. So being able to be a part of that was definitely one of the most special things I always recall when I look back on just my sports career. That freshman year was incredibly fun. It was lucky because I played in the winter season on the indoor team. And so I was able to get to know a lot of the people. And Colby Quiet sort of took me under his wing, sort of as his apprentice. And I sort of learned under him my freshman year, and he was able to teach me all these different things that made me a better player, not just on the field, but off the field as well. So he was sort of the guy I looked up to, and I learned from the whole time. And so that freshman year, we ended up winning. And sophomore year, the whole COVID situation hit. So I didn't have a sophomore year. And that one really hit me hard because I really wanted that year badly, because I would have had, a bigger impact on the team. not to say I didn't as a freshman, I still did, but an even larger role on the team as a sophomore, and then being able to play with a guy like Colby his senior year. I had missed out on that opportunity, so that's something I always that always like saddens me, just because I always think that, oh, what could have been, like how good could we have been? Could we have run it back another time? I think we could have, but I do think that that was one year that we missed out on. But my junior year was interesting because we brought in a new assistant coach who was also the JV coach, Coach Devitt, and he is a guy who has like some of the biggest accolades in all of lacrosse. And I was sort of confused as to why he even showed up to coach us out of all teams, because he was college coach. He's a big sports journalist and sports writer for lacrosse. He knows every pro and college lacrosse coach and player. And he after one game, before one game and after one game, he FaceTimed a couple of pro guys and they talked to us. So he had a lot of connections, and he was a guy who also changed my perspective and experience for lacrosse, and for the better, because his ability to he knew the game so well, and he knew how everyone plays different in the sport of lacrosse. It's a sport that's so dynamic, and everyone has a different playing style, and he's able to identify that and realize that everyone's different. So we can't coach the exact same thing to every single person. Everyone has a different role to play. And he was able to come in and help Coach Blue sort of place everyone in those roles. And so with that, we were successful my junior year. We did lose in the semifinals to Trinity, but that whole season was just a different sort of dynamic that we had with our new coach. And he's one of my, if not my favorite coach I've ever been coached by. Not only just because he's a great coach when it comes to tactics and skills, but just a great person as well. So when you have a coach that is able to teach you certain things that are important off the field as well as on the field, that is incredibly important just throughout all sports, if you have a coach that can sort of do both. So I think being able to have him coming in my junior year was very important and essential. And so then that sort of brings me to my senior year. And so senior year was interesting because the preseason in the winter, my senior soccer season, so last fall, I actually broke my toe in a game. And so I broke my toe and I was still hurting throughout the winter. I went out on a big skiing expedition in Wyoming, and I re-injured it. Like I re-broke it, and my toe was in 3 pieces in the winter. And so it was in 3 pieces, and I went to the orthopedics, and they talked me through. They're like, hey, we can't really do surgery on this at this point, so you can play lacrosse. You're just going to have to suffer through the pain. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. So I played the lacrosse season, or at least the first half, with my toe sort of just in 3 pieces. And in that preseason, I realized, we had a whole different group of guys, a whole different personnel. And, I realized I was the senior and I was the only returning captain for that year. So I was sort of like, I got to rally these guys. I got to get them excited for the season again. So I started a group chat in probably January, and I said, add anyone you think or know is going to be playing lacrosse. And so that's when I got the guys out there, in the cold days after school, just hitting it against the wall, or just getting them in. Lots of them got themselves involved in the indoor league to stay sharp. And I was sending guys like videos on what to practice and what to make sure. I was sending guys, the playbook before coach had sent the playbook out. I was making sure, I was like, I want this to be a great team. And so I was able to rally people to get excited for it. And I think that's where we ended up succeeding this season was a lot of seasons in a lot of sports, you show up and on day one of tryouts or day one of practice, that might be the first time you've touched the stick, the ball, the glove in probably like months or so. And so the whole idea that a coach would want, ideally, and he can't make you practice in the off season, obviously, but they want you to show up on day one already good to go. So they don't have to start from square one and build it back up again. And by, week 3, you guys are at where you should be on week 1. So I sort of took that into my head during the off season, and I wanted everyone's, their stick skills, their tactical minds, everything to be sharp and fundamentally sound. They didn't have to be stellar. I just wanted everyone to be sort of starting at the same level. And so that was something that I think contributed to our success heavily, was just everyone was sort of fundamentally sound. Even the guys who had never played before, they were able to pass and catch pretty consistently before day one of tryouts, which I was super, super pumped about. And so that was something that completely changed the way we were able to approach the season, because day one, everyone shows up and we get into the passing box drills and everyone is passing and catching, and both coaches are like, what happened? Like, some of these guys have never played before and it's working. And so, they realized that everyone had worked in the off season. And so sort of this senior year, we had a great run, and I think it was definitely the best team I have ever been a part of. Just the way we were cohesive as a family and just as a group, and everyone just enjoyed themselves. And I think teams play best when they're enjoying themselves and playing.
Sure.
Because when you have a team that everyone's in it for themselves, you might have the best skills in the league or in your division, but if you aren't enjoying each other's presence during practice, you're not going to get very far. So we were lucky enough to have a team that was very cohesive. And despite losing the championship a couple weeks ago, I still see the whole season as a success. And I was less upset and sad about losing the championship as I was about, leaving that team, because I had had such a great time. Like every day after school, 3:15 to 5:30, it was like the best 2-hour period of my day every single day. So that was something that I was happy to be a part of, and I thought that was very special.
Thanks. Do you want to talk about skiing? I mean, you talked about your injury with skiing, so I want to give you a chance if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, totally. So some people are aware, some people aren't. But aside from soccer and lacrosse, normal field team sports, I sort of go out on my own and do a lot of other adventure sports. So a couple of them have included, rock climbing, and then the big one I do in the winter is a certain type of skiing called ski mountaineering, which is essentially, there's a term in the outdoor world that there's like different types of fun, and we call ski mountaineering type 2 fun, because type 1 fun is you have fun the whole time, and then type 2 fun is like you got to suffer a lot to get to the fun part. So the type 2 fun is sort of what ski mountaineering is. So, I'll go out with one of my friends that also does it. And it's funny because he and I always laugh about there's so few people our age that actually are willing to get up at like 3:30 in the morning to go and suffer through like single digit temperatures to go and ski down a certain, gully of Mount Washington. So, it's usually just him and I, and we're trying to like recruit other people like, hey, do you have like this sort of gear? Oh, if you don't, it's fine. And then they end up getting what we call, term is sandbagged, which is like, you tell them, yeah, you can do it, it's totally fine. And then they get up there and they realize, they're like, oh, this is not what we want. So that's something that has been a great thing for me in the winter, especially because the cardio, and then that's also another mentally tough thing where you have to be able to compartmentalize things like fear and just some of the physical pain and physical tolls that come with it, because there are times where you have to go up there with ice axes and crampons with skis on your back, and things weigh a lot, and you're just trying to go up this pitch that's probably this steep to just get to, so you can ski back down it. But you're doing it while the wind's whipping, or a snowstorm in the White Mountains can come out of nowhere. So all of a sudden the weather shifts and it goes from a nice 30-degree day to all of a sudden it drops to like -5 within an hour, and you're just trying to sort of battle the weather. And that was something ski mountaineering sort of taught me, especially like you have to only be able to control the things that you can control, and everything else just let that work around you, because you can't control the weather, you can't control avalanche conditions, but you can control how you plan and schedule around those things, and you can control how safe you are, because a lot of people tend to make the wrong decisions. And while it may look great from the eye, you have to do a little bit more research and make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. So that was something, this whole ski mountaineering aspect especially is very, very different, but lots of the aspects of it can kind of translate to things, other sports, and just other aspects of my life. And so I think being able to have those other sports that I've come to enjoy, I've been happy that I've been able to build something with that, because those were things that instead of sort of being introduced to it, I just sort of sought it out on my own. So, soccer was introduced to me through my father. Lacrosse was sort of introduced to me just through seeing like my neighbor play it, and he was sort of the one who got me involved in it at first. And so those things were introduced to me. But skiing was a sport. I started skiing when I was really young, and I was introduced to that from my parents, obviously. But after that, I went through alpine ski racing and did all that. And then I sort of was like, well, what else is out there? What can I do that's different in this whole skiing world? Because there's so many different disciplines that you can practice. So I just found, one day I found this like YouTube video, this guy doing some crazy stuff. He was like dropping off of cliffs, but then he was climbing back up the mountain, and he was like out in Alaska. And I was like, who is this guy? I look him up and I'm like, what is this stuff called? And it was like, oh, this is ski mountaineering. And I was like, that looks like a whole lot of fun, looks really dangerous, which it is, but being able to sort of seek that out on my own was something that I was very proud of and happy to be a part of. So I was pumped about that.
The adventure aspect of that sounds really cool. At the same time, I feel like there's like life lessons in there. Like, for example, like you're talking about how it's dangerous and how like White Mountains, it can flip from 30 to -5 like that, and all of a sudden have a snowstorm or an avalanche.
Yeah. So, and that's like one of the things that for me, a lot of people have asked me, like, I always get asked, because I'll come back from a weekend of doing that, and people will see me in school and they'll see my face is like windburnt and weathered, and they're like, why did you go out there and do that? And I was like, well, there's a couple different reasons. I mean, one, I just love it for whatever reason. Sometimes like putting yourself through those like suffering and difficult things, like you come out of it on the other side and you just feel so much pride, and you feel just very fulfilled after that. And that's the thing, like a lot of people will also ask like, oh, do you get scared while doing this? All those things seem very scary. And and when it comes to fear, especially in adventure sports, whether it's rock climbing, ski mountaineering, or just any sort of sport that I've been like tinkering with, like at one point I'm still doing it, like high lining, which is like slack lining, but like a couple, like 100 feet up in the air, and like trying to do that. like all those things, everyone sort of asks, like, don't you get scared? Do you just not have any fear? How do you do it? And, it's not so much about not feeling any fear, but knowing that there is fear there, but being able to sort of compartmentalize it and sort of put it in the back of your head, because fear is often something that like holds us back. While it's there to protect us, there are some things that you have to be able to be confident in yourself and your own abilities. And I think that sort of comes with experience and continuing to do that. Sort of like in big lacrosse games or big soccer games where, there's higher stakes and lots of people feel the jitters and they feel sort of excited or they're a little nervous. But if you've kind of put yourself through enough of those scenarios, you start to just be like, oh, I've been here before. I know what to do. I know my abilities. I just got to go out and play my game. And so that's sort of the same thing in adventure sports. You just got to go out there, play your game. You know what to do. If something goes wrong, you know what you're going to do if something goes wrong. And you sort of compartmentalize that fear and you just sort of keep going with that. Because if you let the fear take over, that's when more things go wrong. I think a lot of people, like especially if you're dialed into something like in rock climbing, if you're completely dialed into just it's you and the wall and you're just climbing up, you're going to be okay. But as soon as you let that fear sort of creep into your head and thinking like, what if this, what if that, you lose your focus on the task at hand, and all of a sudden things can go wrong quickly. And that's the same with other sports like soccer and lacrosse. If you think, then a lot of things can go wrong. But if you just know what you're going to do before it's going to happen and you're just focusing on that one thing, it usually is smooth sailing from there.
All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I did not know that about you. I knew you were into skiing a little bit, but I didn't know all the aspects of that and everything.
Yeah.
All right. So now that you've graduated, what are you going to be doing?
So I am going to be playing lacrosse at Montana State University. It's out in Bozeman, and I chose that because, as you've heard, I love the adventure sports, and Montana is sort of like a haven for all of that. There's rock climbing, skiing, everything you want, but then their lacrosse team is also good, and I wanted to still be able to have a sport to play, because for me, especially with lacrosse, is like I couldn't see myself or picture myself not playing it. And it's something that sort of keeps me centered a bit too, especially in a school environment where you have to get work done and you're just sort of going through the day with your classes, and then after it's over, for me, I always needed some sort of physical exercise or something to go to after, sort of have a schedule to keep me disciplined and structured. And so lacrosse and soccer gave me that in high school, but then being able to have something like that in college for me, and being able to manage your time with that is something that's very important to me. So I wanted to make sure that I had some sort of physical exercise that I was going to be doing, because I think that is so important, especially for like mental academic performance. Being able to exercise and just get out and away for something for a certain period of time is so beneficial. So I'll be playing lacrosse out there, which will be really fun. Especially lacrosse is a game that's always been sort of an East Coast, Northeast sort of thing, and it's been pushing west for a number of years now. And so the way they play out there is different than the way we play out here. And so I'm excited to see how, it's played out there, and just the different sort of people I'm going to meet on that team, and just the different dynamic it's going to be playing in like the Western part of the United States, and just playing against other Western schools and seeing how they play the game.
From what you've heard, how does the East Coast versus the now Western Coast style differentiate?
Yeah, so I would say the whole thing, when lacrosse sort of started, it started with the Native Americans in sort of upstate New York, and the whole thing started in the Northeast and sort of pushed down to the Mid-Atlantic. And everyone in the mid-Atlantic regions and Northeast regions. The style of lacrosse is very, should I say, like, it can be very rigorous, and it's very like, it's fast paced, but it's not like rushed or forced. It's just fast paced, ball is moving really fast all over the place, and everything is just about speed and quickness. And they call it the fastest game on 2 feet for a reason, but it is so fast, and just the way it's played is very fast, but it's very meticulous. And I've seen the West Coast has taken parts of that, but they've sort of implemented their own style where instead of guys running hard and dodging and then like passing it and zipping it around, they might run hard, dodge one way, sort of draw a defense out, slow it down, lull a defense to sleep, and then go fast again. So the difference has sort of been, I've seen, at least through watching film and things, they don't differentiate like very much, but it also depends on who's coaching and where the players are from, especially because I do know that there are players on the Montana State team. Some are from Montana, some are from Colorado, some are from the East Coast. So it'll be cool to have a blend of different styles all playing together to sort of create a very unique team and just how we play. So I'm excited for that.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that. But
Yeah.
what are you going to be studying over there?
So I'm planning on majoring in economics and then either minoring in something like photography, because along with the skiing, I do a lot of photography and adventure photography with that. And so I sort of combine like the adventure stuff with photography, and I'm able to capture some really cool moments. And so I sort of want to go into college and know how to have sort of a business mindset, but then with the photography, learn some more intricate parts of that craft, and then sort of put the two together after college. And sort of the dream or the goal is to sort of have the job as like the guy shooting like videos and photos for like Red Bull or something, and like guys doing things off of like jumping off of cliffs with parachutes and being able to shoot that, or just different sort of extreme adventure sports and being able to capture that. And so that's sort of my end goal with that major and minor. And just, it might change, you never know, but for now, that's sort of the goal.
Very interesting stuff. All right. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Aidan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
anytime.